All right, so I'm going to read this. Hopefully you can see that. There's an illustration there. I'm going to hold it up so that I can see it. There's a lag, so I don't know if it's in focus. So give me about 10 seconds. Okay. Okay, so this is chapter 4, Rule 4. So the book has 12 rules in it. The book is called 12 Rules for Life. And it's published by Penguin Random House, and it'll be out January 23rd. And so this is a book about, this is chapter Rule 6. There's 12 rules, hence the title, and they're taken from a subset of 42 rules that I wrote for a Quora article called What are the Most Important Things That Everyone Should Know? Something like that, a very popular Quora article. Now, the illustration was done by Ethan Van Sciver, who's a comic book artist and a good one. So you can look up his work if you want. It's Vansciver, Ethan. This chapter is about the motivation behind the actions of people like the Columbine killers. And the illustration is of a very, very criminally oriented individual named Carl Panzram. You could look him up, Panzram, who was a very resentful, vicious, violent, destructive, and intelligent person, because those things can all go together. So Rule 6 is called Set Your House in Perfect Order Before You Criticize the World. And the chapters all have little subchapters. So the title of this subchapter is A Religious Problem. It does not seem reasonable to describe the young man who shot 20 children and 6 staff members at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut in 2012 as a religious person. This is equally true for the Colorado Theater gunman and the Columbine High School killers. But these murderous individuals had a problem with reality that existed at a religious depth. As one of the members of the Columbine duo wrote, "The human race isn't worth fighting for, only worth killing. Give the earth back to the animals. They deserve it infinitely more than we do. Nothing means anything anymore." People who think such things view being itself as inequitable and harsh to the point of corruption, and human being in particular as contemptible. They appoint themselves supreme adjudicators of reality and find it wanting. They're the ultimate critics. The deeply cynical writer continues, "If you recall your history, the Nazis came up with a, quote, final solution, end quote, to the Jewish problem. Kill them all. Well, in case you haven't figured it out, I say, kill mankind. No one should survive." For such individuals, the world of experience is insufficient and evil. So to hell with everything. What is happening when someone comes to think in this manner? A great German play, Faust, a tragedy, written by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, addresses that issue. The play's main character, a scholar named Heinrich Faust, trades his immortal soul to the devil, Mephistopheles. In return, he receives whatever he desires while still alive on earth. In Goethe's play, Mephistopheles is the eternal adversary of being. He has a central defining credo. I am the spirit who negates, and rightly so, for all that comes to be deserves to perish wretchedly. It were better nothing would begin. Thus, everything that you term sin, destruction, and evil represent, that's my proper element. Goethe considered this hateful sentiment so important, so key to the central element of vengeful human destructiveness, that he had Mephistopheles repeated a second time, phrased somewhat differently, in part 2 of the play, written many years later. People think often in the Mephistophelian manner, although they seldom act upon their thoughts as brutally as the mass murderers of school, college, and theater. Whenever we experience injustice, real or imagined, whenever we encounter tragedy or fall prey to the machinations of others, whenever we experience the horror and pain of our own apparently arbitrary limitations, the temptation to question being and then to curse it rises foully from the darkness. Why must innocent people suffer so terribly? What kind of bloody, horrible place is this, anyways? Life is in truth very hard. Everyone is destined for pain and slated for destruction. Sometimes suffering is clearly the result of personal faults, such as willful blindness, poor decision-making, or malevolence. In such cases, when it appears to be self-inflicted, it may even seem just. People get what they deserve, you might contend. That's cold comfort, however, even when true. Sometimes, if those who are suffering changed their behavior, then their lives would unfold less tragically. But human control is limited. Susceptibility to despair, disease, aging, and death is universal. In the final analysis, we do not appear to be the architects of our own fragility. Whose fault is it then? People who are very ill, or worse, who have a sick child, will inevitably find themselves asking this question, whether they are religious believers or not. The same is true of someone who finds his shirt sleeve caught in the gears of a giant bureaucracy, who is suffering through a tax audit or fighting an interminable lawsuit or divorce. And it's not only the obviously suffering who are tormented by the need to blame someone or something for the intolerable state of their being. At the very height of his fame, influence, and creative power, for example, the towering Leo Tolstoy began to question the value of human existence. He reasoned in this way. My position was terrible. I knew that I could find nothing in the way of rational knowledge except a denial of life, and in faith I could find nothing except a denial of reason, and this was even more impossible than a denial of life. According to rational knowledge, it followed that life is evil. People know it. They do not have to live, yet they have lived and they do live, just as I myself have lived, even though I had known for a long time that life is meaningless and evil. Try as he might, Tolstoy could only identify 4 means of escaping from such thoughts. One was retreating into childlike ignorance of the problem. Another was pursuing mindless pleasure. The third was continuing to drag out a life that is evil and meaningless, knowing beforehand that nothing can come of it. He identified that particular form of escape with weakness. The people in this category know that death is better than life, but they do not have the strength to act rationally and quickly put an end to the delusion by killing themselves. Only the fourth and final mode of escape involved, open quote, strength and energy. It consists of destroying life once one has realized that life is evil and meaningless, close quote. Tolstoy relentlessly followed his thoughts. Only unusually strong and logically consistent people act in this manner. Having realized all the stupidity of the joke that is being played on us, and seeing that the blessings of the dead are greater than those of the living, and that it is better not to exist, they act and put an end to this stupid joke. They use any means of doing it. A rope around the neck, water, a knife in the heart, a train. Tolstoy wasn't pessimistic enough. The stupidity of the joke being played on us does not merely motivate suicide. It motivates murder, mass murder, often followed by suicide. That's a far more effective existential protest. By June of 2016, unbelievable as it may seem, there had been 1,000 mass killings, defined as 4 or more people shot in a single incident, excluding the shooter, in the US in 1,260 days. That's one such event on 5 of every 6 days for more than 3 years. Everyone says, "We don't understand." How can we still pretend that? Tolstoy understood more than a century ago. The ancient authors of the biblical story of Cain and Abel understood as well more than 20 centuries ago. They described murder as the first act of post-Edenic history. And not just murder, but fratricidal murder. And murder not only of someone innocent, but of someone ideal and good. And murder done consciously despite the creator of the universe. Today's killers tell us the same thing in their own words. Who would dare say that this is not the worm at the core of the apple? But we will not listen, because the truth cuts too close to the bone. Even for a mind as profound as that of the celebrated Russian author, there was no way out. How can the rest of us manage when a man of Tolstoy's stature admits defeat? For years he hid his guns from himself and would not walk with a rope in his hand, in case he hanged himself. How can a person who is awake avoid outrage at the world? The next subchapter is called Vengeance or Transformation. Well, and the rest of the chapter attempts to answer the questions that I posed in that beginning, and hopefully I've managed it at least in some small way. Anyways, that's a bit from one chapter of this book, 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. It comes out January 23rd. It's available for pre-order for those of you who might be interested on Amazon and .com and Amazon.ca, and it's quite heavily discounted at the moment. I think it's 50% off on the Canadian site and 35% off on the American site. Maybe I'll put a link in the description. I hope that the book is helpful. I put a lot of work into it, and I think it's advanced my thinking quite a bit, and I think it's readable. A lot of people have looked at it now, and I've had good editors and so on, and I think that I tried to make it as accessible as possible. I mean, it deals with ideas that are pretty sophisticated, but I'm hoping I got the balance between complexity and sophistication and ease of access right. I certainly hope so. And I hope it's kind of poetic, because I tried to make each sentence scan properly and have a rhythm and all of that. Anyways, my wife has made Thanksgiving. It's not Canadian Thanksgiving, it's American Thanksgiving, but we celebrate both of them because my son is American and we lived in the States for quite a few years. So I'm going to go and see my grandkid and my son and my daughter and all the other people that are around me, thank God. And thanks for listening, guys, and for being interested in. I hope you get your acts together and fix up the world. Till next time.